And bada bing, bada boom, we're recording. All right, guys. So let's have a look. I'll just breeze through all of this stuff because there's a lot to cover. If you get lost or sidetracked in the process, don't worry because the video is being recorded and is going to be in the YouTube channel later on. Okay. All right. So let's start by having a look at the sequence and refresh stuff that we saw in the past. Okay. So the very basic effect that we first saw in Adobe Premiere is the crossfade, right? So this one, the crossfade is in the beginning, okay? It's crossfading from nothing to the footage. So that way we are fading in from black. And then at the end, when the crossfade goes from footage to nothing, it fades to black, okay? Your footage is coming from black and then it's going back to black. All right. And if you right click in between two clips and apply default transitions, by default on everyone's Premiere, the default transition is a crossfade. So that way, wow, you crossfade between two clips. Just have in mind that every time you apply an effect, you have to render it. All right, and then render. If you change anything, like increase the duration of the crossfade, you have to render again. Okay. Right. Now, this footage, okay, it was recorded meant for color correction practice. All right. So color correction is a process of balancing the colors of your footage. Okay. And also to some degree changing the colors of it to evoke different moods or feelings. Okay. So in this version of Premiere, color correction has been made real easy. Okay. What you have to do is select a clip that you want to do the color correction on. And then on the top here, you should have a panel for color, which is right next to editing. If you go on color, it will open on this side of the screen your Lumetri color controls. Okay. The Lumetri color tool, it's the new easy way of Premiere working color correction. Okay. And you have lots of menus to play with. All right, let's start with basic correction. As soon as you click here and you drop down the basic correction, you will be greeted with something called a LUT. Okay, and you have a few options to play with. Please stay away from the LUT. Don't work with LUTs. Don't touch this. Okay, can't touch this. Okay, don't mess with the LUT. That's not for you guys. It's a very poor and lazy way of doing color correction. It gets pretty wrong. I'll show you one. If my Premiere doesn't crash. There we go. There you go. Everything is like highly saturated and just not good. Okay. You can see that this is the root footage. Okay. And the original, the raw footage, and the colors are a bit pale, right? But that gives us range to play a lot with it. So the first control you have is the white balance. All right. So as I mentioned to you guys, you can make things more orange or you can make things more blue. Okay. Now, color temperature, as you know, this will be colder and this will be hotter. All right. In film is the opposite. In film, the orange one is the cold one. Why? The explanation is that when you heat metal, when it gets hot, okay, it turns orange. But when it gets even hotter, it turns blue. So this is like hot-ish, and this is like hot and hot. So we treat blue as being hot and orange as being cold. I know it's confusing, but that's the way it goes. All right. So this is the first control that you have, temperature. All right, you can make things more blue or you can make things more orange. Okay, just don't go that far. Right, next one down here, you have the tint controls to make things more magenta or more green. Okay, if you're doing the matrix, this is the way to go. Right, everything is green in the matrix. Then down here, we move on to the tone controls, starting with exposure. Um, Actually, if you have a look at exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, all of these, exactly the same thing you learned in Photoshop in the beginning, right? So the exposure cranks the exposure up, brings it down. Oh boy, this mouse is not working properly. And so you guys are pretty dark. All right. Contrast, just amps the contrast, or desaturates the picture. Highlights amps the highlights, shadows amps the shadows, and so on, right? There's this button down here called Auto that automatically does a color correction for you, and you can see it's not that good. Okay, it's cranking the exposure way too much, scaling some of the shadows. You know, this doesn't work that well, you know, quite often. All right. Plus, it's a lazy way of doing a color. All right. Moving on to the creative menu, all you have to do is like click the bar here to open and close the menus. All right. In the creative menu, you have a look to choose. So the more than 100 looks you have to choose from over here in this drop down menu, these are just like Instagram filters. Okay. If you click in the look down here, a drop down will come up. A drop down menu will come up. Yeah, there we go. And then you have plenty of filters to pick from: Fuji, Kodak, monochrome, gold, clean. Where's the matrix one? There's one here that looks like the matrix. Western. There we go. It's actually called matrix green. There we go. Matrix green. And you can make it more or less intense as well. More green, less green. Okay. Right. If you want to make stuff black and white, there are some filters here to make it black and white. Yeah, there's three of them. There's the monochrome, Fuji, Kodak, and another Kodak one. Okay, and they all do different levels of black and white. One is more, there's more contrast. The other one is more saturated. The other one is more desaturated, and so on. Okay. You can add some faded film grain. Do not recommend that. Same for the saturation here in the adjustments control. Oh God. See all the colors, they just get highly saturated, and here you go black and white. Now you can use black and white if you want. Just have in mind that black and white carries a lot of significance and meaning in film when you work with it. It's usually more used for old memories and flashbacks and all that kind of stuff, or if you're doing a very classic black and white film all the way through. Okay, like The Artist, for example. Okay, so yeah, using the black and white is up to you. Just have in mind that it should fit the aesthetic of the film that you're working on. All right. Okay. So down here you have color wheels to work your shadows and your highlights, to color them. Okay. I also do not recommend you going to these because they are more advanced. So this one, if you just click and drag, it will drag slowly, and you can see the color changing as it goes. You're basically tinting the shadows red, and you can tint the highlights yellow. So yeah, there you go. It's already very kind of like sepia Western kind of feel. All right. But yeah, messing with the color wheels are more advanced. All right. Moving on to the curves. Guess what? Exactly like the Photoshop curves. Okay. I don't recommend you guys go into the hue saturation curves. Just stick with the regular RGB curves you've seen before in Photoshop. Okay. And if you want to know a trick to get everything looking better already, all you have to do is go and drag this one down a little bit, actually up and then down. A very slight S-shaped curve. They go down and up. Go down. God dang it. There we go. Yeah, like this. All right, so before and after. It already makes the colors pop up a bit more. Right? Just add a little bit more contrast to your footage. Okay, just don't go very far from the original line. All right. So these ones, the color wheels are matched. These are more advanced as well. They're pretty much like the adjustments one, but they are more complex because you can work with shadows, midtones, and highlights, and you can also crank the intensity of each. So if we get the highlights to go pretty red, we can make it like more intense and less intense. Okay, lighter and darker. All right. The next menu is the HSL secondary. Okay. Don't recommend you guys going here as well. And last one is the vignette. So the vignette is basically darkening of the corners of your footage. It creates this vignette effect around it. Oh god. Right. So if you put it negative, the vignette goes black. If you put it positive, it goes white. Okay. Usually it's black. And you can change the midpoint, turn it more to the side, turn it more to the outside and then to the inside. You can make it more round or less round, boxy and then round, and you can feather it, like make it like pretty solid, which is terrible, or like very, very soft. Okay. So quick recap on the things you should focus your attention on when doing a color correction. My biggest recommendation is, first things first, go into the curves and make this very thin S-shaped curve. Okay, so first down, then up. This will add contrast to your picture already, and like good contrast. Okay. Then you could go to the creative and add a look if you wish. There's plenty of filters here for you guys to choose from. Okay. And then in the basic correction, you can add the temperature, the tint, and the basic photography controls that you are already familiar with from Photoshop. Okay. So these are the controls I believe you guys should focus on when it comes to color correction. All right. Okay. So let me think. I'm going to stop the recording and then record another one. Otherwise, the video will be just way too big. Okay. So I'm going to stop this recording.